Here we are back for a second video in my coverage of my trip to Florida and another museum. And in this one, we're going to be looking at the Florida Air Museum, which is based in Lakeland, which is actually where I kind of made my home base while I was on the trip to Florida. If you haven't seen the first one, I'll put a link up above. I cover the Valiant Air Command Museum in Titusville, Florida. As I said, this one's the Florida Air Museum. And it very much, I don't remember seeing anything specifically about it being connected to EAA, but it felt very much like the EAA Museum in Oshkosh. And there's a reason for that, and that's because Lakeland is also the home for EAA Sun and Fun. So a lot of people who frequented that with their home builds and stuff like that over the years had been donating a lot of that to this museum. But outside of that, there is a lot of artifacts there and some really cool stuff. So I did end up taking some video, and I'll be building it up with the videos, but I'm also going to be using a few pictures and some voiceovers to give you some details and some other stuff that I saw there, because it's an open museum, it's active, people are around. It's not the easiest to film videos, especially with a lot of kids and screaming and stuff like that. So I videoed what I could, and I'll use some pictures and voiceover to show you some of the highlights that I found interesting at this museum. So enough of me going on. Let's jump right into this video. Take a look at the Florida Air Museum. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. Now this aircraft behind me, this is the Lockheed XFV-1, make sure I got that right. This was Lockheed's attempt to design, as I'm sure you can see by the way it's sitting, a vertical takeoff and landing fighter. Now this eventually evolved into things like the Harrier and today's, the F-35B model with the vertical takeoff and landing capability. But this was the initial idea. Turboprop engine at the top, it sat on its tail, it would take off vertically, and then in the air would rotate over and continue flying. I guess you could also say this was kind of the V-22 idea of the age, but it was designed as a fighter. This was an interceptor. Now this goes back to the Cold War, when the idea of having safe airfields, it was not a given. Your airfields could be destroyed in a first wave attack and you'd have nowhere to base your fighters. Well, these things could be based anywhere and could take off vertically and could protect any type of city, installation, whatever you needed. So these were the idea. Eventually surface-to-air missiles became a bit more technologically advanced and effective at what they wanted to do, but this was the idea, to have point defense fighters during the Cold War. Obviously the idea didn't work. Pretty cool to see this here. There's another aircraft over at the actual main campus, which we'll see a little later. That is another idea similar to this, which we'll see in a little bit. Now here's another rare one for you. This is a Cirrus VK-30. It was the first aircraft designed by Cirrus, and it was a kit plane that came out in the late 80s. 1987, I think, was when this came out. And not very successful. By all records, only 12 were completed. I don't think there's any still flying today, and this is the only one that I, off the top of my head, know of that actually exists. Now, this is actually Cirrus that we know today as Cirrus. They learned from this that going the kit plane route was not a smart idea, so they went ahead and designed the SR-20/22, and they made it an actual certified aircraft, and they found that was the best way to go. But a lot of the lessons they learned in here, things like the fuselage shape and some of that stuff, they ended up using this to heavily influence the design of the Cirrus Vision jet. So really interesting stepping stone on what in today is one of the most successful GA aircraft, the Cirrus SR-20/22. Now behind me here is a classic Boeing 727. Now, like pretty much any 727 you see in museums these days, or anywhere really that are on display, this is an ex-FedEx. You can tell there's a big cargo, whoops, my arm's going the wrong way, big cargo door right here. It's an ex-FedEx. It was donated here to the Florida Air Museum. It's painted in Piedmont, which was one of those airlines that don't exist anymore. This particular one has a specific name, the Tampa Bay Pacemaker. So it's painted up to represent that airframe. And interestingly, it's set up as a classroom inside. And there's an aviation high school just over here. And this is the only 727 classroom in the world. So there you go. Also of note, people don't get up close to 727s very often. This wing is amazingly clean. It's the main reason they went with the 3 engines in the tail. It allowed for a very aerodynamically efficient wing, and you can just see over here the Kruger flaps that come out along the leading edge in that center section to increase your wing lift. And then out here you've got your standard slats that come out, and then full flaps on the back end. This thing is amazing at short field takeoff. So amazing aircraft. It's too bad they don't fly anymore because it's a really, really cool design. A little while ago we talked about that Pogo over there. This is another one of those airframes that I was talking about that's kind of a weird dead end design. This is the Convair Sea Dart. This was an attempt to build a amphibious, well I guess not even amphibious, a water-based supersonic fighter. Now the idea was, again, airfields weren't a given, and aircraft carriers are expensive and relatively easy to hit. So if you could have a bunch of these things scattered around in bays and stuff like that, it'd be relatively easy to just send them off and protect what you need to protect without having to worry about getting destroyed on the ground. Again, dead end. It did fly. It did go supersonic. It is the only supersonic seaplane in the world. And here it is, sitting at the Florida Air Museum in Lakeland, Florida. So we're gonna head inside and see what else they have. So here we are inside the Florida Air Museum, and as you can see, there is a really eclectic collection of mostly home builds with some replicas and a few actual like older aircraft. Like there's a, I forget, a Ronca, I think that is over there, and there's a couple of others here with a Stearman hanging up here. A lot of these are replicas and or home builds, but lots of cool displays, lots of interesting stuff. So as I did mention, it was a little difficult to get video here. It was relatively busy. I wasn't expecting it to be that busy, but anyways, relatively busy, lots of people, a lot of kids. So it was a little hard to get some of the video I wanted to get, but you can see here some of the overviews of both the outside kind of display garden as well as the interior of the museum. As I mentioned, a lot of really cool, unique artifacts. Interestingly, there was a good display on Vietnam War. They had a MiG-21 cockpit as well as some rocket launchers and stuff that were really cool. There was a whole corner dedicated to Howard Hughes, including things like the XF-11 wind tunnel model, an actual piece of XF-11 wreckage, flight suits that were worn by both Howard Hughes and Katharine Hepburn back in the day, as well as things like propellers and stuff from one of the crashed airplanes during the filming of the Hell's Angels movie, as well as an actual press pass, a ticket to get you past the police line if you were invited to the grand opening, the world premiere of that movie. Lots of really, really cool things. They were setting up for Sun and Fun. So the grounds were a little bit busier than usual, but there were quite a few aircraft out there. I also went across to one of the hangars that is set up over on the far side as part of EAA's Sun and Fun to see the F-14 they have, as it's now located over there. I have a feeling they'll be adding more stuff to that hangar as time goes on. So I also stuck my head into the restoration shop, took a look at what's going on in there. A really cool display with some engines and stuff and a couple of older home builds that were being kind of restored or built up again. I believe they do a lot of summer camps and stuff here, and they work in conjunction with that aviation high school I mentioned earlier. So definitely recommend this museum. If anybody's in the Lakeland area, give it a shot. It's not very expensive. I think it's about $15 to get in, and there's a lot of really cool. Also, there's a really interesting display about NOAA, the NOAA National Oceanographic and Atmosphere Agency. Really, really cool. Highly recommend coming out to this museum. And I'm going to wrap it up here. So thank you all for watching. Stay tuned. I have one more video coming out from one of the museums I went to in Florida. That should be out in a few weeks. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you all next time.